Now, let's focus on the credit market, or rather one product in the credit market in Kenya. In just 8 days, count those, 8 days, Safaricom has secured 1 million new users for its new overdraft feature on the M-Pesa platform. Kenya's biggest single telecoms operator has surpassed its CEO's expectations, Bob Collymore, by hitting that target. Take a look.
It was started 11 years ago as a service by Kenya's biggest telecom operator, Safaricom, to enable unbanked Kenyans to transfer money via mobile phones. M-Pesa now offers loans and savings in partnership with local banks, as well as merchant payment services. Safaricom, partly owned by South Africa's Vodacom and Britain's Vodafone, launched the new overdraft feature called Fuliza early this year.
Turned out we got the million by day 8. And by day 8, we had lent about $10 million. Now I think we're probably at about $15 million that's been done that. So really exciting product, quite creative. But if you look at it in the scale of things, it's just like an evolution of what we've done before. But clearly it meets a very latent demand.
Fuliza is underwritten by Kenya's lenders KCB Group and CBA Group, which already had partnership with Safaricom to offer short-term loans on M-Pesa platform.
And it's very simple. When you go to buy something, if you don't have enough cash, you simply draw down from your overdraft. And you can keep drawing down until you've got to your overdraft limit.
The Communications Authority is finalizing a report on competition, which, among other things, seeks to control Safaricom's ability to set the retail prices, curb its marketing expenditure, and force it to share its extensive infrastructure with other operators to level the playing field. M-Pesa has around 20 million active users in Kenya and has become the principal driver of profit growth for the dominant telecoms provider in East Africa, as revenues from traditional voice and text services has flattened off. Noel Makugu, CGTN.
All right, then, so that's one element of the business. But keep this in mind, Kenya's main equities index has fallen by 23% in the last 12 months. And Safaricom, the biggest listed firm on the bourse, hasn't been far behind. It has posted a 19% price decline over the same period. Nonetheless, analysts now have a positive outlook on the stock, with 9 buy recommendations among the analysts tracked by Bloomberg. Earlier on, I spoke to one of those analysts, Tracy Kivunyo. I started by asking her what are the key regulatory and tax risks that investors have to be concerned about with respect to Safaricom.
So the proposed regulations, strongest of which was proposing that Safaricom should not replicate any sort of services that cannot be reasonably replicated by another operator. Right. That would essentially mean that Safaricom is pricing at the lowest profitable level, meaning that it would have to increase its services across for Airtel and Telecom, for example, to be able to be profitable. Looking at their books, they made the fastest growing cash cow, at least at this point in time. The fastest growing revenue lines would be the data end and the mobile money side, yes. M-Pesa. So if to the extent that these price controls on the wholesale end might apply on voice and text, it's not really a threat, is it? Because that wouldn't really touch their cash flow that much. Not for voice and text, but it wasn't clear whether data will be impacted as well. So that's a big unknown. That would be big, because data affordability is an issue, which is why you've seen a lot of price wars corresponding with an increase in usage. So if you increase the prices, you're making it uncompetitive for the sector, and also usage will come down. Right. That would be negative for Safaricom. But haven't data prices, or generally speaking, haven't they essentially been trending downwards over time? Could the argument be made to the regulator to say, well, the market's doing its job, data prices are falling, why intervene? Exactly. And in fact, that's why we would be very happy to hear a story of Airtel and Telecom margin for a Safaricom investor, because it would communicate that you have a stronger competitor in the market, and with the price was seemingly eating into Safaricom's data market share, Safaricom will be able to make a case that actually it's a competitive market and the regulator does not need to step in. So in this sense, we could say that the merger, if it happens, because it's still in talks, so in this sense, we could say that actually having a duopoly would not necessarily be a bad thing. No. I think consolidation is in order, because if you even look at how Telecom's market share has evolved over the years, even before Helios entered, it seemed that it was really suffering. It seems that a two-player market is what Kenya needs. We've covered some of the regulatory ends of it, but what about the risk that some have posited that perhaps you might actually need to separate Safaricom? So you split its telecommunications business, quote unquote, from its mobile
money business, because now that's turning into a juggernaut all of its own.
Yeah.
And there are also questions around dominance in that particular respect. Is that also a serious risk that we should be taking seriously?
For now, I don't believe that's a very serious risk, because even separating the businesses will not fundamentally change the leadership or how the services are run. These are Vodafone-owned entities and will continue to remain so, be it separate or together. So what I think is the biggest risk now, regulatory-wise, would be taxes. Obviously, we've seen a lot of revenue coming through M-Pesa, and I would expect there would be, if there's any government constraints on revenue, they would move to tax excise on mobile money transfers.
But can they push it beyond what they did in the last Finance Act? Because, I mean, that by itself was already relatively high.
Not really, seeing that it moved from 10 to 15%. I would say there's still some legroom for that to grow if they wanted to. And the issue is that affordability is becoming an issue for the mobile money services, because now M-Pesa has become part of the ecosystem. So we are going to also have to start having discussions of, is M-Pesa affordable for Kenyans? Will they be able to actually use it 5 years from now with these charges?
Because it is, would I be correct in saying that it is to some extent systemically important just by virtue of its size, because it handles trillions of transactions every year?
Exactly. And now we're not just seeing it in person-to-person transfers. You're paying for your bills with it. You're paying for government services with it as well. So it is important for Kenyans to have access to the service. So I would say long-term pricing risk would be one of the regulatory risks I would price.
Where's the pain point as far as taxes are concerned? Because presumably we've got this 2.6, maybe 2.7 trillion shilling budget that's coming in, looking at the budget policy statement, the draft one anyway, in June. And if that is approved, that's going to require some sort of tax hike at some point. So what would be the ideal tax rates to hit that delivers a sort of revenue bump, but doesn't at the same time constrain the use of mobile money, at least with respect to M-Pesa?
That is difficult to say, but I would say if government is looking for an immediate hike in taxation, there will be better place to increase the corporate tax rate, but that also will be very negative for the sector.